What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Noel Andrews of JobRack.eu. Noel, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. Actually, Ian Garlic talks about you all the time. I don't know if you know that. So he's like, you must have Noel on the podcast. Ian did a great episode with me. He runs Video Case Story, and he talked about how his dad, I don't know if you talked about this with him, Noel, how his dad had a restaurant, and that restaurant had live dolphins in it, right? And it's strange in general, I think, but this restaurant was not in Orlando where he lives now. It was in Wisconsin, which makes it even crazier. So he just shared some of the unique stories and interesting ways to think about business and getting attention. So that was a fun story from that one. Also, there's 2 episodes I did with Jason Swank. I know you know Jason as well. One was how he built up his agency to 8 figures and sold it. And the other one, how he had been buying up agencies and what he was looking at in the agency space for valuations. And then another good one was Todd Taskey, who runs Second Bite Podcast. He kind of pairs private equity with agencies, help sell agencies, and Second Bite, because sometimes those agencies, when the private equity group sells again, they make more in the second bite than they do on the first. So that's also a fascinating interview about the agency space, evaluations, and all of that too. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We do that by helping you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. So kind of like Noel, what you do to help people get amazing staff. We are the magic elves that work in the background to make it look easy for the host so they can create amazing relationships and great content. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce Noel Andrews. He's the founder of JobRack. You can find JobRack.eu, where they help agency owners hire remote team members from Eastern Europe and South Africa. So I think they've had over 2,000 hires at this point, and his team are true experts in the remote hiring world. Noel, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Jeremy, great to be here.
So I'm going to share your website for a second as you're talking, but just talk a little bit about JobRack and what you do.
Yeah, sure thing. So, it all comes from the point that hiring is really hard, right? If you are particularly if you're a US or Canada-based agency and you're trying to hire locally, it is really, really tough to find the right people that want to stick around. And so we talk about hiring actually awesome remote talent, focused around Eastern Europe and South Africa, because they are the sweet spots of remote hiring. And I can go into that in lots more detail. And again, a real focus on real team members. So everything from software developers, operations and client account managers, creatives like graphic designers and video editors. And then we do a lot in the marketing space. So real, PPC, paid media, SEO specialists. So the real kind of experienced hires that you build a really successful agency around.
What made you decide to focus on Eastern Europe and South Africa?
Yeah, so I actually, way back in 2018, I bought JobRack. It was a tiny little job board at the time, focused on Eastern Europe. And the reason why the previous founders had focused on Eastern Europe was because, to them, it was this sweet spot of remote hiring. Reason for that is because there's really, really great education system, really great English in terms of kind of people's communication skills. a very direct communication style, and it kind of translates into really great kind of cultural alignment with the Western world, UK, US, Canada, Australia, etc. And it's got much lower cost of living. So typically, like kind of half the cost of hiring in the US or Canada, but typically for like equal or better quality people. And so, yeah, sweet spot of remote hiring. Over the last kind of 5.5, 6 years, we've kind of grown the business, and about 18 months ago, expanded out into South Africa, just to help us. There were certain roles that native English is particularly helpful, especially if we get into copywriting. And again, South Africa, same time zone as Eastern Europe, so still great overlap with the US, but that all important kind of cultural alignment, and still, lower cost for kind of really great people.
Talk about the evolution of JobRack. It started off, you said, as a job board. So when you
Yeah.
were actually a customer, what did it look like? And take me through a little bit about the changes.
Yeah, so I had 15 years in the corporate world, leading, very large teams up to kind of 200 people or so. So lots of kind of hiring, firing, and leading of large teams. I spent a year building an interview coaching business and actually helping candidates. And as I was coming towards the end of that, I wasn't struggling to scale it. So that was my first kind of like entrepreneurial failure. And I was then helping people, doing some kind of remote hiring consultancy, so helping them hire. And one of the routes for that was JobRack was actually a source of really great candidates. And the two kind of previous founders that had kind of scaled, bought the bit, it created the business. They had bigger things going on. It was a side hustle for them, and they announced that they were going to shut it down if they couldn't sell it. And it was perfect for me. It wasn't very expensive, but all of the things that I would have procrastinated on. So the logo, the branding, the design, it had a database of candidates and clients. Actually, it meant I could get going really quickly. So jumped in, and kind of away we went. Ran it kind of, I was, in the corporate world still, slowly building JobRack up. And for context, when I bought it, it was doing $15 a month in revenue. So it was very small. It had been mothballed for about a year. And so picked it up out of that kind of like archive kind of mode, and spent 2 years kind of slowly growing the job board. And what I realized was that in order to grow a job board, you need two things. You need either digital marketing skills or you need money. And I didn't have either of those things. And at the same time, I was getting lots and lots of people asking me to help them hire. They were like, "No, the candidates are great. The job board is great, but we'd like
Just do
help.
it for me."
Just exactly that. Just do it for me, right? Hiring is hard. I had a lot of resistance because, well, recruiters don't always get the best rep out there. So I had a lot of resistance to kind of jump into that world, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. We jumped in. The business has scaled hugely since then. And it's better for me because my skill is in really helping people. And so I spend my life, in my days kind of chatting to agency owners, helping them figure out, which roles are the right things for them to do. And then we help them actually find the team members that they want.
Talk about the process a little bit, because obviously it starts off as a job board. You get requests on people saying, I don't want to go through posting. I don't want to vet candidates. I just want you to do it all for me. So the service evolves as more of like a done for you service instead of, do it yourself. What does the process look like now?
Yeah. So the big thing is we put a lot of effort into understanding who the right team member is for, the agency owner that we're hiring for. So, I don't know, let's say you're looking for a really great operations manager. Well, there's certain skills and experience and kind of traits that you're going to be looking for, great attention to detail. They've got relevant experience working in an agency, etc. But the thing that's really important is figuring out who are they, right? Who do they need to be to work well with you and your team and the vibe and the culture that you've got? So put a lot of effort into really understanding that and helping make sure people and agency owners are actually looking to hire the right roles. Because oftentimes we get people coming to us thinking they need one role. And actually a couple of conversations later, we've realized that actually it's a different direction that they should take entirely for, what's right for their agency and their business. So once we've got that, we get out there, and a lot of what we do is about active sourcing. So the best candidates generally are not hanging out on job boards, right? They've got jobs, even ours, right? We have a great little job board. It's great for some roles, but I would say 80% of the time we are out there hunting, headhunting, and actively sourcing, bringing people into, kind of the hiring funnel. then the hard work really kind of kicks in. In the days, the resumes have always been, had their fair share of BS in them. It's worse, so much worse since ChatGPT. So we ignore all that kind of side of things, and it's the human to human element that's so important now. So we filter, we screen, we interview, and we test, which is a really crucial stage. Somehow the world has come to this place where the way that we recruit is by interviewing, right? And yet interviewing is not a good measure of whether someone's going to be good at being an operations manager or a software developer. So testing's really key for us. And then from that, we then use everything that we've had to help build a really great shortlist of typically like the absolute very best 5 candidates for that particular agency owner, right? Which, 2 agency owners might both be hiring an operations manager or a graphic designer or a SEO specialist, but the right people for each of them might be very, very different based on what they want. So we figure that out, get that really, really tight shortlist, and then we kind of hold the agency owner's hand through the rest of the process, through interviewing, figuring out who to make an offer to, how to reference them, how to contract them, and how to pay them when they're remote and they're in a different country. And so really kind of being that kind of hiring partner, and just, holding their hand throughout the whole process, even when it gets a little bit sweaty.
And it looks like, you still have, people still can do it themselves if they prefer. So they could still go in and post on the job board and use that function, or they can do the just everything's done for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And for some people, that's right? There's a lot of good business reasons for me to actually remove the job board, right? Because it gives a little bit of confusion to people, like which option should they choose. But there are some people that are maybe earlier stage in terms of revenue. Maybe they're looking for, just a kind of, 5-10 hours a week of time. And it makes less sense to work with us, the hiring service, like financially. And it's still there very much. It's very, very cost effective financially. It's not so cost effective from a time perspective, right? So it's $249 to post a job ad, but it's going to take you like 40 to 50 hours of effort in order to hire someone really, really good. So it's all down to how much time and energy and desire you've got to run the hiring process.
All right. So now we're at the point someone wants someone good. What are some of the big mistakes you see people making with hiring, or maybe that even you made early on before you knew?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the big and still do make some from time to time. We manage to catch ourselves most of it. I think the biggest mistake is that people jump into hiring too quickly. Right. So they realize they're like, right, I need to hire someone. I've got to get some help. I've got the budget. I'm going to do it. So they go on ChatGPT, they whip up a quick job post based on what ChatGPT thinks they need, and they post it and they start, advertising, they start filtering candidates. And then what typically happens is at some stage through the process, hopefully before they make an offer, they realize that they're looking for the wrong thing, or they start interviewing candidates and they come off these interviews and they're like, why? Oh, hang on, why is this so painful? And it all comes back to the fact they haven't spent enough time up front figuring out what it is that they actually need doing and who is the right person to do it. And so a lot of what I do, and I love hanging out with agency owners and having these kind of chats, a lot of it is almost like business coaching. It's almost like going, right, well, what are the challenges that you've got? What are the goals? Where do you actually want to head to? And then figuring out what's the right path of hiring to actually get them there. So I think that's the biggest mistake. People jump into hiring too quickly, and because they're normally desperate, they're normally snowed under with work in the agency world, and then they make mistakes that can be really expensive and really frustrating by not spending that time up front and getting enough input to make sure you get kind of on the right direction.
Any other big mistakes? So hiring too quickly. Also, it sounds like people don't really refine their job description, all the things they're looking for as well. Is there an example that you could think of where you've talked to someone, and I've heard this story where they have a job description, it's really 3 different positions in one job. So it's like tough to find like a unicorn that could do all these things. Yep. Is there an example you could think of where you help someone kind of refine, okay, I know this is all the stuff you're looking for, but you kind of separate it out or refined it with them?
Yeah, definitely. I can think of a couple, and the really common one that I get is people come in and they think that the thing that they need is like an executive assistant, right? And executive assistants are amazing; they can be absolutely life changing. But in an agency owner, a lot of the time we get someone coming in and they're saying, right, I want them to handle my email and like my calendar. I want them to handle like client interaction. I want them to manage projects for me, right? And the list just goes on and on. Oh, and can they do my social content as well? And we kind of dig into it. And generally, what we find that they really need is an operations manager, right? So if you're an agency owner, and it depends what you're doing particularly, but if you're running that you're around about kind of like 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 people, and you don't have an operations manager, that is often the single role that makes the biggest difference to the life of the agency owner, because you need someone that's going to kind of take on making sure that things happen. So I think that's a pretty common one. Someone comes in looking for this unicorn type role that's executive assistant, operations manager, project manager, client account manager, marketing assistant. Some of those things can be combined, but often it's the switch. And we've done this many, many times, is saying, hey, no, what you want is a really, really great operations manager that maybe also does client account management. They can be combined just great. That's the probably the most common one that I see.
So from the operations manager, what would you define? What would be the proper definition of the responsibilities of the operations manager?
I think making sure that all the right things happen at the right time. Measurements wise, it's client satisfaction for me. And, it's the smooth running. I mean, you could also almost measure it in terms of like, quality of hours of sleep of night at night of the agency owner. They are there to make sure things just run smoothly. And that's why, certainly for smaller agency owners, actually combining the role initially of operations manager and account manager is really valuable, because they then live and breathe the client experience. And then they can put the right processes in place. And then as you grow, you split those roles out, which is exactly what I did at JobRack.
What else would you say someone's asking for one thing, but you're saying, no, you're actually looking for this? So in that case, the person comes in saying, I'm looking for a VA to do all these things. And you're saying, I think what you're really asking is for an operations manager. What's another example where they're coming in saying one thing and you're kind of pointing them in, a specific direction?
Yeah, I think there's probably two really obvious examples. One is the term virtual assistant or VA, right? It is, we never use it, right? In terms of relating to any hires, because people associate it with, very, very cheap people to just do tasks in generally other regions of the world. And so generally what we find people really need is either someone to really do a job. So some people refer to a video editor as a VA, right? Well, they are a virtual person if they're working online and remotely, fine. But a video editor is a really skilled job. So there's definitely a piece around the term around VA. I think the other one that's most common these days is people come in saying, hey, I need a marketing manager. And I'm like, cool. 15 years ago, you could hire a marketing manager and there'd be a nice generalist marketing manager. And there were 10 channels, right, that they could be managing. Now there's 58 or 580, depending on what kind of channels you think about, right? It's so broad. People come in and saying, hey, I want a marketing manager that can do all my marketing and be great at everything. I'm like, it doesn't exist. You've got to focus and think about what kind of marketing do I want doing? Hire someone that is an experienced and skilled in those one or two key channels and knows enough about the others to know when to get help or whether that should be the priority for the strategy. So I think marketing manager is still a term that's out there, but it's very, very broad. And so we have to narrow that one down a lot.
So maybe you'd say, okay, you're looking for a marketing manager, but what do you really want to do? And they say, I want to do, maybe Google and Facebook or YouTube or something, and you'll recommend finding a specialist in one or a couple of those who can also kind of just know the channels broadly to see what would be the best fit.
Yeah, exactly. It's, is it PPC? Is it content? Is it SEO? Is it partnerships? Like, what are the channels that you want to have experience in so they can really, replicate that and grow it? And I think the other piece with marketing managers particularly is oftentimes people come in and they want one person that can figure out the strategy, manage the execution, and be a marketing assistant as well. And what you either get someone on marketing assistant money trying to do strategy. That doesn't end well. Or you end up with someone at not necessarily CMO level, but, really senior marketing person that can do strategy, But if you ask them then to do, the nuts and bolts of it, yeah, probably going to be less happy doing that. So it's finding that right kind of compromise, or not necessarily compromise, but middle ground between, right, where's the strategy going to come from? Should that actually be a consultant, right? Should that be a, short-term paid engagement to help you figure out the strategy? And then a manager, a really great manager, to actually execute and be hands-on and kind of get stuff done.
Love that. So some of the other mistakes, hiring too quickly, maybe not having, you mentioned you have tests and other things in place, not being clear on the job description and the person. Any other big mistakes that you've seen people make or that you've made?
Yeah, I think the job post, we still see people put job posts on JobRack that are plain text, maybe with some bullet points just to jazz it up a little bit. And people forget that they are trying to attract the absolute best talent to come and apply to them. So a job post needs to be like a sales page, right? So if you look at your own sales page for your website, it's going to probably have a hero image at the top. It's going to have a headline. It's going to have a call to action and some subtext. It's probably going to have some social proof in there and client testimonials, things like that. It's going to have clear steps on what to do next. And a job post should have exactly the same things, right? So if you look at, any of the job posts that we do for our clients or that we do for ourselves, we have all of these things. We include testimonials from our team saying what it's like to work at JobRack, because the kinds of people we want to attract, real team members, they care about this stuff. And imagine how compelling it is when you land on a job post and you see someone in the business already talking about how great it is to work there, right? So I think people often forget that you are selling an opportunity, right? And there is a hot competition. There is there's tons and tons of really great jobs out there. If you want to attract the best people, you've got to put effort into, attracting them in the same way you would with a client or a prospect.
What about some big breakthroughs that you've figured out in the process? And it could be specifics. I mean, you mentioned tests, but when you're looking at the whole hiring process, what are some big breakthroughs you've had that you use or you recommend your clients use to attract the best people?
So one of them is a really simple thing, actually. So we have always collected videos as part of the hiring process. The only exception is with technical roles like software developers. We will typically hop on a call and not ask them to do a video. But when we're collecting videos, we used to have it as part of the application form because it was simpler, the process was better, all kinds of reasons. But we found a massive drop-off in terms of the conversion rate, basically, from the people that would open the application form to completing it. And when we actually went out there and we started gathering feedback, what we found was that a lot of people will start a job application. Maybe they're on the bus, maybe they're on the train, maybe they're at, on their lunch break, who knows what. They might not be in a position to do the video there and then. So when we actually then separated it out into like a second stage, now we do automate this, right? Someone fills in the application form, they are getting invited to complete the video. We saw a massive increase in conversion, both because they could then do it at a time that's convenient for them in the next 24 to 48 hours, but also because there's an element of, great, thank you so much, this is our next stage. So it feels like progression on a journey, not asking them to do too much too early.
Yes, you separated it out. What do you, when you look at the different stages, what does that look like?
Yeah, so typically so you've got the job post, you've got the application form, record a screening video or record a video, and it's, we ask a few questions in that. And what we're looking for on the video is we're looking for energy, right? That's the primary thing we're looking for, energy and language skills. We then go into, typically we're going to then filter and take the best into a human to human interview, actually talk to them and get to know them. And that for us is the only way to really filter people out effectively. We then take them into a test stage, and then we use the test and everything we've had so far to build a shortlist. And then, if we're hiring for ourselves, we go into longer, more in-depth interviews. If it's for our clients, then our clients and agency owners are then going to choose their favorites from the shortlist and then interview, maybe 2 or 3 from there, with the benefit of, everything that we've done, our summaries, the test results, etc. And the tests that we do are generally, we're asking them to do kind of like representative tasks that they do for the role, that, it's not going to be perfect because they've not been onboarded into your business, but you are going to get a really clear view of, can they, is there that suggestion that, actually they get it, right? They can work in the kind of way we want to. And it gives a really, really great set of things to talk about at the interview.
I'm curious of the actual interview and some of the questions you ask. And I've heard you talk about this before. And one of the things you really look for is a great attitude. Um, what questions are you asking, and what are you looking for in that interview from like an attitude perspective?
Mm. So I do a couple of pretty unusual things, and one of the things was given to me as a tip when you're trying to hire salespeople. What you want is for them to be able to tell a story. And actually, what I realized is for all team members, I want to be able to get to know them. So I start off, I get their permission. I'll say something like, "Hey, would you agree that it's more important for me to know who you are than what you've done?" And most people will say yes. And I'm like, "Great. Well, I'm going to take an unusual approach, but you can ask me to stop at any time." And I'll ask them to tell me a story about one of their parents. And I'll listen, and then they'll often share. It gets deep really, really quickly. We will talk, and I'll ask them about what kind of childhood or teenage experience has shaped who they are today. And for me, this is as a way of connecting with someone who hopefully might become a long-term team member. It's incredible, right? You get to a depth that I get complimented on these interviews, even from the people we reject. They say it's like no other interview they've had. And it's the best interview they've ever had. And that's what we want and we aim for. Then we use our values, right? So attention to detail is really, really important to us. So I'll ask them things like, when has your attention to detail saved the day? And that's, so some of these are, I'm really intentional with the wording, because someone that's got good attention to detail will have saved the day at some point. And your definition of save the day will be different, but that's the kind of thing we're looking for. And we're looking for, how do they bring this to life? But the biggest thing for me is getting to know people and getting past the standard HR kind of questions that often aren't actually that helpful.
I love it. No, thanks for sharing that. No, it's super helpful. So now the person is hired. You hire someone. We were talking before we hit record about you really are focused on making the delivery process and refining that, making it better and better. What are some of the things you've done to refine the delivery process?
Yeah, big thing that we did. So we used to have a separate approach. So we had recruiters and we had account managers, right? And the recruiters were kind of back office and didn't liaise directly with our clients. And then we had the account managers doing that. And it worked, but it was very noisy internally, right? Our Slack channels were just buzzing, right? And one of the things we realized as we grew, and we grew pretty quickly, and then hit a bit of a ceiling, and we were trying to figure out what was going on, and we realized that our structure wasn't right. So we changed that. And so we now have massively enhanced the kind of the quality, and we've changed out quite a few people. So we now have recruitment partners that are directly working with the clients, right? One-on-one, their job is to stay incredibly close to the client throughout the hiring process. It's like we're on a journey together, typically 5 to 6 weeks. We're going to do this together. We're going to communicate really, really closely. So that was a big shift, moving away from that account manager model to, higher quality, people that not only are really, really amazing recruiters, but also can manage clients and can manage agency owners who are busy, who have got lots of conflicting priorities, etc., and managing to kind of become kind of best friends with them for that period. So that was a big shift. And I think another shift for me, and it was really, really difficult, was we were about 3 years in since we launched the process. And I realized that the manager that had been with me since the very, very start, actually, we'd hit her kind of like limit, basically. We'd hit her kind of capability limit. And, one of the tricky things is that she, for various reasons, was uncoachable. Now, because I'm a big believer that like most people can grow and have huge kind of like capacity to grow, as long as they're coachable. And in this case, that wasn't the case. So very, very difficult decision to, she exited the business. And I brought in a head of recruitment to lead our kind of delivery and recruitment function, specifically someone that had done this before, that had delivered recruitment and a recruitment operation at scale and knew what that took and how to really kind of develop people, because that's what it's about.
So someone brings someone on. Talk about culture retention, especially in, obviously you've been in this remote world for a long time. What are some of the things you've seen or you do that help maintain that culture in the remote world?
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things that we do. There's two that are probably my favorites. One is I do lots of Loom videos to my team, just day to day. Like I'll normally do at least a couple a week, and it will normally be as I'm walking somewhere. Maybe I'm walking to a WeWork office, walking back from the gym, and I'm just letting them know what I'm up to and what's going on. I'll often share feedback that we've had from the clients, things like that. But a lot of the time, agency teams don't really know what the owner's doing, right? They don't know what they're spending their time doing. So I use that as a way of really, really keeping connected with the team. I speak to them every day. We have a team stand up. But the Looms, just letting them know how I'm doing, how I'm feeling, what's going on, that helps a huge amount. And the team really, really like and appreciate that. So that's one thing. The other thing, and it's the simplest little thing, we do birthday cards. So we have a little tool that we use called sendwishonline.com. It looks like something out of like maybe the early 2000s, and it's just an electronic greeting card tool. And everyone gets the link. They can put a meme or a GIF or a picture and a message, and then it gets sent to the team member on their birthday. And people love it. People really, really love it. We do work anniversaries as well. And that is something that, yeah, really kind of like builds kind of, for me, culture is like the little things that you do that build and make the kind of culture you want, rather than some grand gesture that people think culture is all about.
I love that. I'd love to understand maybe a little bit more about what you do through some specific examples. I know one of the companies you've helped is Newfangled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Newfangled, with Mark and the team there, we've been working with for about 3.5 years now. And Mark and I, as I do with so many agency owners, he'd heard about this remote hiring and he'd heard about Eastern Europe and the quality of people. And so we hopped on a call and we just chatted through, well, what's possible? Like, what are the people like and what roles can you hire? And so we started with one role. We hired them a WordPress developer, as it was at the time, and then just kind of built out from there. And I always remember these kind of conversations where people hire their first person from Eastern Europe or South Africa, and then it's normally a few months later, and they come back and they're like, "No, like, oh my God, you didn't tell me these people were that good." And I'm like, well, I did, but I don't want to sound too salesy. And from that, it's built out. We've hired, I think, around 7 or 8 people for Mark and the Newfangled team over this last kind of 3.5 years. They have an entire team out in Eastern Europe, and they're achieving incredible things, right? Both because of the quality of the people, and the cost base is helpful too. But for me, it's not the cost or the reduced cost that keeps people coming back. It's the quality of the people. And so that has been huge. And so, yeah, I chat to Mark and the team there regularly, and we're always looking. And, what I love about the team at Newfangled particularly is that they really have taken on board the importance of treating people like real team members. So we talk a lot about, right, what's the next step in terms of benefits and, kind of treating people the same regardless of, their, contractor status or which country they're in.
There was another one, Noel, a London-based marketing company.
Yeah, so marketing agency here in London, they've got a team of about 15 people, and they were really struggling to hire account managers here in London. They've got 2 or 3 already. And what they were finding when they were hiring is just the quality was not there, and it was really, really expensive. And so they came to it again. They were referred into us, and we had a chat, and then we went out and we hired them 2 account managers, and it's been huge for them. The reason that I'm not going to name them is because they've said kind of pretty openly to me that these account managers are the best account managers they've ever hired. And that's not the best for Eastern Europe. It's just the best, full stop. The biggest challenge they're having is stopping them working too many hours, because the 2 people they've got are just incredibly passionate and are loving the difference they're making. And we've just been hiring some other roles for them right now. So they've had huge benefits from just getting just incredible quality people, really, really great experience, that love the opportunity to work for, in this case, a UK, a London-based agency.
Yeah. Are there certain skills, or what do you look for in a really good account manager?
First thing is just their energy, right? It's the most important thing, right? When they come on a call with a client or when they email someone, it's how are they showing up? What's their energy like? That's the first thing. Second thing for me is I want to see experience, right? I want them to have, got their reps in or been around the block a few times, to use those kind of cliches so that they've just seen the different types of clients that are out there. There's lovely clients, there are nightmare clients, right? And they just need someone ideally having had experience at, how to manage them, how to change their approach for different people and different personalities. That for me is actually the biggest, most important skill for an account manager, not just having one approach for everybody. You've got to change it based on who you're dealing with. Naturally, you then get into attention to detail, the fact that they can be creative in problem solving and things like that. But for me, if they've got energy and the ability to adapt their style for the situation and the client, that's the main thing.
Because I feel like it's a very unique skill set. It's almost contradictory sometimes where you have to be super nice and listen, but also sometimes be able to push back on people as well.
Yeah, we hired probably the most interesting kind of account manager, and it was an account manager and accountability manager for a client of ours. You might know her actually, Mandy, over at Hands Off CEO. And so they're an amazing firm and they kind of help agency owners with growth. They have an amazing coaching program. And what they needed was someone to kind of account manage their clients who are CEOs and owners of agencies. They needed to keep them accountable to the actions that they'd agreed with on their coaching calls. So they needed to find someone who was, very gentle, but also could be pretty robust and pretty bolshy and, call out Jeremy, people like you and me and be like, Jeremy, you've not done the things you said you were going to do. You got to do them. The deadline's Thursday, right? That was fascinating. And we found an amazing person. They're absolutely crushing it for Mandy and Mandy's team there. So again, we find these people. And I think one of the things that helps here is that the communication style and cultural style in Eastern Europe particularly is very direct. Someone recently said to me, they're like, oh yeah, it's like they're from New York. And I'm like, okay, great analogy. Love that. I'm going to use that. And so that kind of directness, not rude, but just straight and super refreshing. But that it does help that culturally that's the norm.
Yeah, I did see that, I think, somewhere on your page that said somewhere like straightforward to the point. Oh yeah, no fluff, no BS, just honest, direct communication.
Exactly. So refreshing. So refreshing.
Yeah, people could check out. I did an interview with Mandy of Hands Off CEO. She's got a great book, Hands Off CEO, so people can check that out as well. No, I'm curious. I know we're always trying to grow as leaders, just to uplevel our own skills, and I'm wondering what resources have you found to be helpful, whether it's books or distant mentors that you follow.
Yeah. So I think I've had a lot of coaching over the years in various different ways, from mindset through business coaching programs. I'm very fortunate in that I'm in some really, really amazing communities of entrepreneurs and business owners, and I spend a lot of my time. That's my friendship group now, which I absolutely love. And so I get a lot of kind of input and, kind of peer feedback, and we challenge each other there. I think one of the things that I'm working on at the moment is, who do I need to be for this next stage of business growth? And, what do I need to let go of particularly? And it's far more letting go of things than it is taking on new things. So that's a very much a work in progress right now. It's, the cliche is, what got me here won't get me there. And, hustle and determination and sheer grit has, got us this far. That's got to change. I've got to be, I'm very well aware there's going to need to be more leadership, potentially slightly less action, and definitely more thinking. And I have a bias for action, so that's a work in progress.
What have you found so far about what do you need to let go of?
I think letting go of doing things. I'm very, very organized, and with a bias for action, it means I can get a lot of stuff done. It doesn't mean I should, though. So letting go of just things that maybe I could just let the team do, but actually sometimes it's quicker for me to do it, and so therefore I do it. I think saying I have a tendency to say yes to everything. I'm a very social person. I love hosting events and gatherings and bringing people together and helping people connect. And so, like, I get an invite for something that's that's interesting and with kind of good people, I'm almost certainly going to say yes. And that I need to be more restrained about that, because everything has a consequence. It takes me away from, any chance at just having gaps in my diary to really think, and not 15-minute gaps in my diary, but 3, 4, 5 hour blocks in my diary to really, really kind of think about stuff.
I'm curious, what have you found that's important for you to stop doing? I know, like, I ask because I struggle with this as well. So selfishly ask, but like John and I, my business partner, will have an intervention meeting. We used to have it once a week, and basically the intervention meeting was on me. I don't know. I guess I'm the problem, but on what I should stop doing, literally. So I'm curious what you have found to be helpful that you stopped doing.
Yeah, it's early days. I think if we asked my team, they'd say I haven't been entirely successful at stopping doing things yet. I
Those
caught
are the
myself
best people to ask, the team.
Exactly right.
They know exactly
And
what you should stop doing.
yeah, we're doing a big push right now around some automation around like internal process. And last week, we'd had a few good sessions with the team. We'd identified some clear priorities and how we could move some things forwards. And then that afternoon, I found myself jumping into Zapier, amending some zaps. I was in my element. I was loving it. And halfway through, I'd spent about an hour on it. I was like, this isn't the thing. Stop doing it. Like Theodora, my team member, she can do this, right? And so I did actually wind my way back out of it, saved it as a draft, and then let her know. But so that's a good example of things. If other people can do them, then I just need to let them do it. But yeah, it's early days.
It's tough for me. I get it. Communities. You mentioned there's really important communities. It could be ones that you're a part of, or just ones you heard are really good. And I know there's different agency communities. What ones have you heard are good?
Yeah, so I'm in a few. The Bureau of Digital is an amazing agency community headed up by Carl Smith. I've been to some of their events. I spend a lot of time chatting to people from that community. That's a really, really nice Slack-based community with lots of events. Obviously, Jason Swenk's program and community that's around that. I hear amazing, amazing things. I've partnered with Jason and the team and Darby there for a few years now. And then I'm in some separate kind of non-agency specific ones. So one's the Dynamite Circle, which is been in that for nearly 8 years. Location independent entrepreneurs is the kind of theme from the guys that run the TMBA podcast. That was where I bought JobRack. JobRack was born in their forum back in 2015, and that's how I kind of found it and grew from there. And then more recently, I'm in Hampton, which is the community founded by Sam Parr, and again, really, really great collection of people. I think the common thread for me with the communities that I really enjoy is that they are of people that have got a growth mindset, but that are also really giving, really open about things, and there's good levels of vulnerability. They're the ones that I enjoy.
Love it. I have one last question. Noel, first of all, thank you. Thanks for sharing your story, your journey, your lessons. Really valuable. Everyone can check out jobrack.eu to learn more. And my last question, I'm always curious. I don't know if you're a audiobook listener or reader. I'm curious some of your favorite maybe books or audiobooks, or it could even be podcasts that you have found helpful.
Yeah, my absolute favorite is it's called The Power of Moments. And it's a brilliant book, and it is all about the opportunity that we have as business owners, and that all business owners have, to create moments for our clients. And I think most businesses are terrible at this, right? There's so many interactions and moments that are just average at best. And yet this book makes it's really kind of easy to digest. It's very, very inspiring. It links back into, the founders of Airbnb talked about like the 11-star customer experience, way back years ago this was. So yeah, The Power of Moments is a really, really great one. And again, I kind of almost like challenge every agency owner to then just look at their kind of client process and go, hey, how can we deliver some really great moments in this process? Unreasonable hospitality is another one on a very, very similar vein. But again, they're the ones for me that I think that's what sets us apart. Like, I'm working really hard and have done for many years now to build a very helpful, friendly, and personal business. There's so many faceless businesses out there. Every time I get an email from support or sales, and I'm like head in hands, like, what are you doing? Like, this is crazy. Who is it? Whereas, anyone that goes to jobrack.eu and sees our page or clicks on our about page, it is really clear who we are and, what we're about. We post all of our team pictures up there. We've got our team retreat videos. It's all about, we are real people. This is who you're going to be working with. And for me, like, people want to work with people. So, and hiring is so much about the people side. So yeah, The Power of Moments and Unreasonable Hospitality are two really great books on that topic.
Noel, thank you so much. Everyone check out more episodes of the podcast. You could check out jobrack.eu, and we'll see everyone next time. Thanks so much. Thanks, Noel.
Cheers, Jeremy. Take care.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like 100 grand.